Justice for Renee Nicole Good. Justice for Renee Nicole Good.
Welcome to the Roots Rundown. I am your host, Payron Baxter. This is our not bi-weekly, but I guess Thrive Weekly. It's 3 times a week. It's Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Just our little short rundown show of things that we might have missed in our main show. Last night we had a fantastic show with the activist and advocate Christy Puckett. So please go follow her. Big shout out to her. If you missed that episode, you missed a good one. We got into a lot of stuff, and she was able to, I think, really put it in an honest way that we were able to speak in a way that I think a lot of Black people understand politics in a way that is forceful and powerful and something that we can all learn from. So if you missed that episode, please go back and check it out yesterday. The Radical Roots episode with Christy Puckett. Just Google that. It should be within our show notes and within our show listing. But that was here in Charlotte, North Carolina. That was the march for Renee Nicole Good, who of course was shot by a cowardly ICE agent, Jonathan Ross, in Minneapolis on January 7th. Yep. And since then, it's been a tornado of emotions. I'll say that. Well, I'm in a blender of emotions. And and people start. I think a lot of white people have started to look at the system of policing and law enforcement, all these things that we've been conditioned to believe are inherently good, that are inherently a value and a virtue, and they're realizing, oh, that protection that I thought that I had, I do not have. And with that, it has allowed most of white America to, I think, wake up to the conditions that a lot of Black and brown people and women, even white women, they've not been considered human beings in the fullest extent of the law and the fullest extent of our society. And they saw that with Renee Good. She was a mother. She was a wife. She was someone who was caring for her community. And this fascist state, which this country has always been a fascist state, put the boot on her neck. And I truly believe is because of something I said last night with Christy Puckett. It's the nigger lover syndrome, where white supremacy will protect a certain group of white people until they go against that system, until they challenge the system, until they try to stand in solidarity with those who white supremacy has deemed to be not human beings, right? They will dispose of you. This is why on that first episode earlier in the week, I talked about Viola Luoza. I talked about Schwerner Chaney and Goodman, the 2 Jewish men who were found in a shallow grave in Mississippi. We're seeing it time and time again, and now Renee Good is a part of that number. And that also, to be honest, that is also what the work behind trying to denigrate the word woke means. This is why you have people like a Joe Scarborough, Alyssa Slotkin, and I don't know if you guys have seen clips of her going around. She's been saying that we don't know what's going on. We don't know. We can't just, let's all take a deep breath. These are people that are supporting the system. But Joe Scarborough, Alyssa Slotkin, James Carville, these type of people who, when they are railing against the word woke, what they're saying is, I'm not a nigger lover. White supremacy, don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. I'm a good one. Trust me. I am not a nigger lover. I'm not one of them. So the same way, woke does the same work that nigger lover does. Because in a racist mind, when a racist back in the 50s or 60s heard nigger, they're like, okay, that's not a real person. That person deserved whatever that person did, whatever the Klan did to them, whatever the police did to them, whatever the system did to them. And then you hear lover, which means that someone who is probably not of African descent chose to stand with those people, and then therefore they deserve what they got. That is the same sort of machinery behind the impetus behind the word woke right now for white people. Now, of course, woke in the Black community has been around for over 100 years, just meaning, pay attention to the systemic goings on. Make sure you stay alive. Keep your head on a swivel. Don't have your neck all out in that Chris Rock joke, right? Like, can't have your neck all out. Be careful of that cop. Be careful of that judge. Be careful of that system. And white supremacy requires white people or people that believe themselves to be white to be afraid of that, to be bludgeoned into silence. And what Renee did with her whistle and her voice and her advocacy and her bravery was show their weakness, show their cowardice. So it's been a very tumultuous few days since her murder, her cold-blooded, unnecessary murder. And of course, we've got a lot of these asshats, responding to it, the JD Vances of the world and whatnot. But there was another murder we found out about of a brother named Keith Porter. I'm going to play you some of that info right here.
Just days into the new year, the mother of 43-year-old Keith Porter is still filled with grief and disbelief. According to law enforcement, her son Keith fired celebratory gunshots into the air with an AR-15 style rifle outside his apartment complex on New Year's Eve.
Armed with an AR-15 rifle, possibly suffering from a gunshot wound.
An LAPD report states the off-duty federal officer confronted Porter, identified himself as law enforcement, and claims Porter fired toward him, prompted the officer to return fire.
What should have been a simple arrest and possible a citation has turned into a death sentence.
The family's attorney says this all could have been avoided.
But instead of staying in his apartment for a trained law enforcement officer from LAPD to respond, he made the premeditated and calculated decision to grab a firearm.
Fox 11 reached out to the Department of Homeland Security. In a statement, the department said the off-duty ICE officer bravely responded to an active shooter situation at his apartment complex. In order to protect his life and that of others, he was forced to defensively use his weapon. DHS goes on to say their officer immediately called police.
According to his version, Keith shot 3 shots towards him. We have questions on if there was any shell casing recovered from Keith's weapon that would indicate he in fact fired the weapon 3 times.
Keith's family and their attorneys say they have yet to find a witness to corroborate that the father of 2 fired towards the off-duty officer.
So there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there, right? Like I didn't realize ICE could respond to quote unquote active shooters on New Year's Eve, when most people are shooting guns in the air at nighttime. I thought their jurisdiction is only over investigating people who are quote unquote undocumented people. But we didn't hear about this story. We didn't hear about the story. And I think this also goes back into the larger, broader conversation of he lacked the social currency for America to care. And I talk about this a lot, within my tenure within local politics, and not to sound like a curmudgeon, but it's very important because if we don't address it, then who does have our back? Where can we go for refuge? Where can we go for political organizing and activation? But I say that, there's white supremacy, of course, in the Republican Party, right? They're the ones rolling the red carpet out, literally a red MAGA hat carpet for white supremacy. And then there's white supremacy also within the Democratic Party, structurally, through policy, through what they support, through what they give just tongue lashings to. And I was telling someone earlier today about when I was going to talk about Keith Porter, and I said, Black people, we get white supremacy from both sides. We are told that our position in this country is not important, is forfeit from both sides. Of course, the right wing, they're going to do it through the actual violence to our bodies. They're going to do it through erasing our history. They're going to do it through their rhetoric, right? And using their media networks to ultimately say that we are inherently violent people, inherently dangerous people. And again, if we're so dangerous, why did you take us from Africa? You should have kept us there. Why did you rape us to turn us to look like this? I digress. But then on the left, it is we're told of our station in this country through constant tone policing, misinterpretation, and this kind of admonishment about any time we bring up these issues, right? We kind of get this this indifference towards our suffering. So when I say that, and people, they don't want to imbibe that, because people don't mind being racist, they just don't want to feel racist. So when we say, look at this national reaction to Renee Nicole Good, which of course should not have happened, I was heartbroken to hear that, to see that gruesome video. But then on the other hand, it's equally as gruesome to see Keith Porter be murdered by ICE, an off-duty ICE agent. And remember, ICE agents are the people that were not good enough to become police officers. They weren't good enough to go into the military. A lot of them are oath keepers, 3%ers, proud boys. So us trying to normalize and equate them to policing is very dangerous, because that's the whole point of the 10th Amendment. I'll talk more about this in subsequent episodes. That the point of the 10th Amendment is that federal officers or federal employees have certain levels of power, and everything below that goes to the states, right? And policing is a state and sometimes municipal and county issue, right? So if you're telling me that a federal agent who does not have a jurisdiction over any citizens can just become a cop, then why don't you just become a cop? Because a cop has certain accountability measures put into their job. Right? They have to, I mean, at a bare, I mean, they're rarely held accountable, but you get my point. They have to show their face. They have to have their name and badge. They have to give it to you. If you ask for a supervisor, they have to provide that. There are certain things they have to loosely know the law. Now, they don't know the damn law either, but there's a certain level that they too must uphold that. So if ICE agents can become law enforcement, can become police, that is very, very dangerous. Why do I say that? Because that's exactly how the Nazi SS started. It wasn't always, oh, these jackboot thugs putting people into ovens. It started with detentions. It started with, apprehensions and detainments. But then there was a explosive moment where these people are beyond reproach. Where these people, you can't say anything about them. Going against them is now going against the state itself. That is the slippery slope, and I need us to understand that. So when we're sitting here acting like, well, it's all law enforcement, they're all cops, they are not all cops. These guys couldn't pass a psych eval. These guys couldn't pass a background check. These guys couldn't do the training. These guys couldn't run a mile in 28 minutes or whatever the fuck it is. This is who these people are. So we need to understand that when the media says, and I saw Abby Phillips say something on, I think she's on one of those extremely loud Animal Farm ass panels of hers, and she was like, these officers, blah blah blah, using this sort of police-like language, as if like we don't know what these officers are doing and blah blah blah. They should not be touching or dealing with citizens. And we have the screenshots of what their jurisdiction or what they're able to do within the legal code is, and they actually cannot fire on people. And we have to disabuse ourselves that the police can. Who told you the police can kill you? Who told you the police can kill you? That is the first thing that we have to start to unwind. Like we have in this country have so accepted our own fate because we don't want to seem impolite. We don't want to seem incredulous when we are telling about the horrors of society. We don't want to seem like we are trying to change the system that benefits me, not me, but white America. Because you're not safe either. But why did America react so forcefully for Renee Good and not even a blip about Keith Porter, a 43-year-old man, father of two? Why is that? You know the answer. But what does that mean for who we are? People like to say, this isn't the country that I know. This is not the country that I know. Yes, it is. Well, it's the country that we've always known. I saw someone online say, when did people start being taught that this, nothing matters unless it happens to you? And I commented, I said, just so you know, Black people have been educating each other that this system never cares about you. My grandma taught me how she used to scrub floors for an old white lady. She used to say she was an old Jewish lady. But you got to think about the time, right? And think about the power structure, the power dynamic. She was scrubbing floors. She had, at the time, 4 children. My grandma ended up having 6 children. She had 4 children at this time. She was scrubbing baseboards for this white woman in America through this system, right? This white woman in the 1960s. This white woman then, when my grandmother was finished, or maybe she's halfway finished, spits on the floor and says, "Keep going, nigga." My grandmother remembered that enough to tell her grandson decades later how that impacted her and how that shaped the way she has to maneuver through this world. Imagine if you've never had that experience. Imagine if the only jobs that you could do were domestic work and servile work. It allows you to understand how you can maneuver in this world. And to a degree, again, very sad about Renee. She didn't have that understanding of like these motherfuckers with guns will shoot me and they will get off and they will blame me for my own murder. When I was the chair of the Democratic Party, I used to say this, my favorite Zora Neale Hurston quote, and I said all the time to the point people get tired of me saying it, but it's still just as true today. She said, "If you're silent about your pain, they will kill you and say you enjoyed it." I don't know what is a better representation of what we're seeing right now than that. And those of us that are afraid to speak up or to say anything because I want to lose this job, it's already lost. I know that sounds crazy because you're currently working, you're working that promotion, you got that deadline, you got that schedule, you got to get there. It's already gone. People are going, JD Vance just said it. He said, what we're seeing right now with ICE, we're actually going to ramp it up here. This is just the beginning. We're actually going to start going door to door. That's the Nazis. I just told you how if they can become police officers, even though they don't have the legal jurisdiction to do anything to you. And then JD Vance then says they have complete immunity, which they do not. They are telling you, if you listen to us, these masked men with guns who are screaming at you with these tattoos that you know are fucking racist. Did you know that a racist is also a sexist, that is also a homophobe, that is also a xenophobe, that is also ableist, that is also poor, so they're also greedy, so they'll also do whatever for money? That if you don't listen to that person who does not know the law, who didn't graduate from high school, who didn't go to college, I'm not saying you have to go to college, but you get my point. That if you don't listen to that person who's belligerent, who's trigger happy, who's abusive at home, who doesn't care about his own life, then you're outside the law. Now, you know your rights, but you exercising your rights makes you outside the law because we are no longer under a rule of law system. It's no longer a rule of law system. It's not a rule by law system. A rule of law system means this is what the law is on paper and between these 4 corners, these squiggly lines, they've been agreed upon by a bunch of racist white men, but ultimately we all live within these 4 corners of the social contract. That's rule of law. We are now under rule by law, which means the law is whoever is in the office by the decree of the king, by decree of Trump and his melting orange pumpkin seeds falling out of his ears and his hair looked like spun sugar with all this orange shit smudged on his face and his farting himself awake self. Whatever this mad king says is the law. And they, the second part of that Zora Neale Hurston quote, and they will kill you and say you enjoyed it. Now, the Keith Porter thing is absolutely despicable because this is the long tail of white supremacy. This is the long tail of white supremacy. We have to understand that this is white people's job, people that believe themselves to be white, job to undo this. And when I say that, it does irritate a lot of white people. They're like, oh, stop putting it on us. I ain't voting for Kamala Harris. I read white fragility, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Hear me out. Hear me out then. Then hear me out. Since you're so woke. Since you're so woke. I know you don't want your husband to hear. What do you want black people to do about white supremacy? If you understand what white supremacy actually is, not just white people think themselves to be better. That is not what white supremacy is. It's a piece of it that is the emotional factor that connects it to the human populace. But whose responsibility is it? How would a person who, I just told you that story about my grandmother who was scrubbing floorboards and had a white woman spit on the floor and say, "Finish up, nigga." How is that person supposed to dismantle that system? My grandma didn't slap her. My grandma didn't beat her ass. My grandma didn't spit back on her. She did quit. She said she quit that day. She quit that day. That doesn't dismantle the way that woman viewed my grandmother, who was in her 20s at the time. A grown woman. So when I put that question to my white compatriots or people that believe themselves to be white, they get irritated. They don't know what to do. They're like, well, I mean, I'm trying. Well, no, what I'm saying is you have to first unlearn that you're white. That's the first and foremost thing you must do. You are not a white person. Well, Perron, how are you a black person? I've been over this before. We've had our identity stolen from us, and we were told that we were these black things because on top of that, look at me, we were bred out of our connection to our homeland. We can rarely trace our genealogy. Again, I got some of the master's blood in me, but since they've created something called the one drop rule, I am now a part of the black contingent. And what we did is we found love and hope, and we connected back to our roots the best we could through understanding and the seasonings and the spices and the drums and the love and the culture, so that we created something. Whiteness was literally created to exclude the humanity of everyone else that is not white. So there is no such thing as white culture. There is no such thing as white music. There is no such thing as white dance. There is no such thing as white thought. There's European thought. There's British. There's Irish. There's German. So at most, you have to start with, I'm a European American. That starts to begin your journey. But now we're sitting here saying, but I can see in epigenetically the way my brain is set up that when I see a white woman die, I react differently than when I see a black man die. Because we've been conditioned, even black people have been conditioned for hundreds of years. This isn't recent since the advent of the cell phone, for hundreds of years to know that our lives are forfeit to the state. And that level of protection has actually made a lot of people that believe themselves to be white to be weaker right now. They're not able, they don't have the muscle, they don't have the thick skinness to realize that we're all the same people. So when they see a white woman, they're like, oh my God, that could have been me. But they didn't see themselves in George Floyd. They don't see themselves in Breonna Taylor. They don't see themselves in Tatiana Jefferson. They don't see themselves in these people in Sandra Bland, who had a broken tail light, supposedly. They don't see themselves in that. And that's what we've been talking about for hundreds of years. And when I would talk about this, and when I was in political life, it was like, oh, Perron, you're pushing people away. Well, if I'm pushing you away with the truth, what does that say about you? What does that say about your politics? And so we're going to keep talking about Keith Porter. There's not a GoFundMe, from what I understand yet, or, it needs to be started. People need to be in the streets saying his name as well, because these Nazis are coming for all of us. But I do have a couple clips before we get out of here of how I meant to play this last night with Christy, but we didn't get a chance to. This is, let me find it here. Listen to this stupid shit.
The woman who lost her life was a self-proclaimed poet from Colorado with pronouns in her bio. A 37-year-old white woman named Renee Good. The Daily Mail says she leaves behind a lesbian partner and a child from a previous marriage. She was a disruptor, though she considered herself a legal observer. But there's no evidence she had a law degree.
Think about how much dehumanization went into that teleprompter for that fucking piece of shit. He had to say she's an activist. He had to say she had pronouns in her, and these are all things that I've seen in comments Instagram and Facebook, like, oh, when they try to downplay the reality that I'm saying on a comment or something, they're like, oh, look, he's got he, him, and his, he's got pronouns. I knew it. The pronouns. These are communicating things to their viewership, to their millions of people that watch that asshole, that sexual assaulter, creepy asshole who lets the air out of his wife's tires. That's Jesse Waters. To get her to need his help. Oh, you got a flat tire, you need some help? That's what he did. So he's communicating she's not deserving. Remember, nigger lover theory. He's communicating this person is not worth your humanity. And then to say she left behind a lesbian wife. Oh my God. They are not, we don't see them in our white Christian future. There are no lesbians. The nigger lover theory. And this goes back also to like these motherfuckers. I don't see another Gadsden flag around. Because this whole thing was the government can't trample on sovereign citizens. She was a citizen of the United States. She was a citizen. And all you jackboot, it's always white men driving around these fucking trucks. So they got on their sleeve with the flag and the flag up, sideways. And I say it every time now. Where are these strong white men? Because she was a U.S. citizen, and the tyrannical government that you're so afraid of is trampling on citizens. But they've never cared about that. What they've only meant was that we get to harm you. And that's what Jesse Waters was communicating. That's what he was fucking communicating. But I do not have faith, unfortunately, that white America is ready to fight fascism. I don't think y'all are ready. I think y'all need to get ready. I think people are waking up. But why do I say that? Look at this shit.
If you'd been a Marine, I would have brought some crayons. No. Listen.
I love you. I love you. I want to hug you.
You can't do that.
Oh,
No.
I could.
I mean, I would let you.
I don't mind.
You could hug me. I would embrace it if you would hug me.
I will. Come over.
I can't go that way.
I do.
So,
We have a heart. You know what I mean?
take off all that shit and come with me. Come with me. I got a safe house. Oh, yes, I do.
If you couldn't see what that was, or if you're just listening in, that was a line of masked ICE agents, Nazis, and I'm assuming a line of counter protesters or protesters and there's these all older white women, and they're sitting there smiling at them, and I want to give you a hug. I want to give you a hug. It reminds me of that. Remember that Pepsi ad with Kendall Jenner and the fly? If you just give the cops a Pepsi, if you just give them a Pepsi, they won't shoot you 3 times in the face. Maybe Renee should have offered Jonathan Ross a fucking hug. Maybe if she would have gave him a hug, she wouldn't have 3 bullet holes and her child be an orphan. I don't think the overwhelming majority of white people are ready to fight fascism. In fact, the overwhelming majority of white voters voted in fascism. And then the other ones who are on the opposite side of that, I think, are truly in denial of what it will take to fight this. Because their politics is not rooted in a politics of freedom, a politics of liberation, a politics of equality. That is not what their politics is. Again, their politics is really rooted in, I'm not MAGA, I'm not, a Reaganite, I'm not a Nixonite, I'm not a George H.W. Bushite, I'm not a McCain, but I just want to have a good relationship with my dad, who says the N-word. I want to have a good relationship with my brother, who doesn't like those Mexicans. He says it all the time. He calls Chinese people bad words. And I just want to if we could just come together, rather than fight these people, rather than stand in solidarity with people that are fighting for her old ass life too. That man made his choice. That man made his choice. When you are standing with a group of people that can murder people with impunity, according to the Vice President of the United States, who is the most insufferable, weak-kneed, pathetic piece of shit to ever be vice president. And I know we had Dick Cheney. But JD Vance is so cowardly, such a cowardly bitch. Won't even stand up for his own fucking wife. Won't stand up for his own kids. This man ain't shit, but white America, as long as he's then appeals to Erica Kirk, white America could watch Erica Kirk blow JD Vance on a stage with Usha and the kids there, because that to them is the pinnacle of their version of America. A white man with piercing blue eyes, and Erica with piercing blue eyes, and her blonde hair, and her Bride of Chucky doll face. And if they culminated their relationship into being together, it would be like, in Ghostbusters when they said, "Don't cross the streams." It would cross the streams and make the whole show. Ah! That's what this is. So until people get over this fixation for white supremacy, which does not lower your healthcare cost, which does not fix that pothole, which does not educate your children, which does not put food in your belly, which does not allow you to move freely about the cabin across the country, which does not allow you to have more money in your pocket this year than you did last year, which does not allow you to have healthcare, which does not allow you to have voting rights, which does not allow you to be like, that's the trick bag. Is that they will accept white mediocrity that is actively failing them right now. Moody said that our credit score has dropped for the first time in ever. Loss of 2.4 million jobs. 600,000 black women specifically. We're happy. I wanted this. Gas prices are down. Where are you going, Clem? Where are you going? You have nowhere to go. Folks, we're in the shit. And until we start to actively understand this is a white supremacist problem, this is not about policy. There is, again, you cannot identify what policy. If we just show them that we care about, roads and they don't give a fuck. They want violence. This is an accelerationist movement being led by a cult leader who he himself is dying. And when the cult, if you know anything about cults, I've read more about multiple cults, they are willing to take out the flock. And he is the president of MAGA America, but he is the president of the United States of America. And if he's willing to kill them, put them in harm's way, like in COVID, like in the insurrection, like losing their jobs, like losing their health care, he's willing to kill you too. And you trying to find common ground with these fucking people instead of standing in solidarity because you got to learn some more shit or unlearn some shit, and you don't want to be uncomfortable because you want to go live in your segregated enclaves and send your kids to these segregated ass schools like here in Union County, where most of the people who don't want to listen to people of color, black people who do the work, who do the knowledge, and try to tell them, no, I have a better idea. Let's just find joy. Let's just be happy. If we're happy, we'll get them to. They don't give a fuck, and that is not something that is an affirmative stance for politics. You have to fight for something. Trump offers them hatred, bigotry, sexism, racism, violence. They want that shit. It's easy. It's the lowest hanging fruit in this country. What do you stand for? It's not just we stand for this because guess what? The elected officials aren't saying none of that shit. And then we try to push them. Then it's like, well, don't push them too far. Then which one is it? Which one is it? Do we not deserve better? So we need to demand it from a Roy fucking Cooper? Or can we actively say, you know what? This is not enough. And as we talk about Senate runs, this guy, Graham Plattner, I'm sure y'all have heard of him out of Maine. he, you know, he got into some hot water. We talked about him on our main show, where he had, I guess, a Nazi tattoo or two that was associated with Nazism. He claimed he didn't know it, and then he got it covered up. Now he did, you know, he even had his shirt off at his sister's wedding, and she married a Jewish man. So I'm assuming if a bunch of Jewish people were there that they saw this tattoo and they knew it was a Nazi tattoo, they would have said something. So he claimed he didn't know about it. He got it covered up, and he's been making some hard-hitting statements about the most pressing issues that keep popping up. He had a good statement on Venezuela. He called it geopolitical gangsterism. He said it was illegal. He said she needs to be returned because it's illegal. You can't commit a crime and then say, well, the crime is okay because the crime is committed against a bad person. That's not how law works if you believe in the law. But this was his statement on the murder of Renee Good. And I think this is the baseline. And you hear him out.
What we saw today in Minneapolis is what happens when you send undertrained amateurs with guns into American communities with vague orders and no accountability. Republicans, including Susan Collins, have voted to exponentially increase ICE's budget. But we did not get from that a professional service. What we have gotten are thugs who are terrorizing our communities. Dismantling ICE is the moderate position now. We need to pull the people responsible for the killing of Americans in front of the justice system. And we also need to hold accountable those that empowered this madness. It needs to come to an end. ICE needs to get out of Maine. ICE needs to get off American streets. And we need to get back to being a nation that cares about each other.
Hey, look, everybody, it's about what you do. I'm not in love with none of these politicians. What are you saying? What are you doing? And the idea, we get people like Chuck Schumer. I don't know if I have that clip here. People like Chuck Schumer. Do I have that clip? Maybe not. But there's a video of Chuck Schumer scurrying off, being asked by CNN's Manu Raju, are you willing to abolish ICE? And what does he say? He says, I have a lot of problems with ICE, but, and then trails off, and then, right? That's a moderate position, is to abolish or dismantle. I'll take dismantle. Fuck it. I'll take dismantle of the organization that is unaccountable by any means, and they only report to the executive office, and they only do the whims of a aging racist and rapist, and they can go door to door asking you for your papers. That is a moderate position to say we're going to dismantle that. The idea we can ask Roy Cooper, who wants our fucking vote, who we don't want to get murdered by this fucking thing or detained by this nascent Nazis, is beyond ludicrous. Roy Cooper wants your vote. And can you imagine when more people will be murdered by ICE? Because so far we've got Keith Porter, we've got Renee Good this year, we've got 2 people yesterday shot in Oregon by Customs Border Patrol / ICE. You know, it's all in the same realm of racism. And then they have to call the police for help. More people are going to, by the time we get to the actual elections in November, and he's not president, he's saying, well, I think there's just a few bad apples. These people don't deserve your support. And we need to let these people know that. And if he said, well, I'm just one man, then you got to start banging the drum and when you get in the Senate. Because what's the point of having power if you don't wield it? Because these people are not representing you. They are representing the owners of your communities. They're representing the owners of the construction lobby. They're representing the owners of how, you know, these funds and grants get spent. That they're representing that. They don't represent you. And that's not me saying this in some sort of cynical way or some nihilist way. It's look at their voting patterns. Look what they say and look what they don't say. And it's up to us to hold them accountable. It's up to us to educate ourselves to be like, you know what? This is not my best fucking friend. And last night we did the work. We pulled up websites of Roy Cooper. There is nothing up there. But then we pulled up Byron Donalds, who's running for governor in Florida, a piece of shit sellout. But guess what? He's got bullet points. He can at least say, I stand for this. It's all lies. But at least you know where he's saying some shit. Roy Cooper's just hoping you love his warm Werther's original tone. And I used to be attorney general, and I'm from North Carolina. I'm just I remember I've been here since I was as tall as a knee on a frog. Who gives a shit? Are you going to go fight for the people, especially the people that are the base of the Democratic Party? Black people, people of color, women, LGBTQ people, racial minorities. What are you going to do? I don't give a shit if you're a nice man. Chuck Schumer, I'm sure, is a nice man. But he's also hugging a Christian fascist, Marco Rubio, and he himself is a Zionist fascist. So niceness does not equal good work. And that is what has been trapping the Democratic Party probably since we've got the right to vote in 1965. Folks, thank you for tuning into the Roots Rundown. We're building this thing out to make it more accessible. We're touching on real-time things. I'm talking more cultural stuff and kind of how these things interplay. And it's going to be unrelenting. Again, big shout out to our guest last night, Christy Puckett. If you missed that interview, please go check that shit out. It was great. Fantastic guest. We'll have her on before the primaries in March. But yes, this is your opportunity, and you're sitting there and you're wallowing, you're doom scrolling. Just ask yourself the question: what can I do? What you going to do about it? So, folks, please scan the QR code. It helps us stay viable. It helps us stay, independent, to get you this news in a way that is unvarnished. We're trying to get some sponsors here, but this is something for local North Carolina, but also through a black and brown lens. We don't have this. We got the holler, some white boys who understand politics through a privileged lens. We got Carolina Forward. We got these other places. But we need something from a black and brown lens to talk to the people who represent the base of the Democratic Party. So if you could throw us a couple bucks, I appreciate it. And if not, we'll still do this work, and we'll see you next time. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Sunday for our main show at 8:30. So please tune in.